All right. Thank you for attending this session. This is going to be part of our sexual assault series. And we're going to be talking about who does these sexual assaults. One of the things that this is Kevin Carmody. I'm the Title IX coordinator at Ferris State University. One of the things in my past is I worked with a man by the name of Steve Thompson, who is a profiler. And while we don't often use the profiles in the college setting, I think it's really important to know and understand what these behavior is. A little bit on the disclaimers, okay? So this is obviously a much larger issue than 15 minutes. To go into all of this would take a lot longer time. So we're going to kind of rush through this, and you're probably going to have a lot of questions. That's fine. We can have a lot more discussions in person, but we thought this was a good jumping off point. Also, we want to talk a little bit about the language we're going to use. We will use the term survivor, victim, and complainant sort of interchangeable. I know some people have very strong feelings that they're a survivor, or that people who experience this are a survivor, not a victim. We use these interchangeable because of the different facets and the different lenses that we look at this. Similarly, we will use the term predator, perpetrator, respondent, all interchangeably. With pronouns, while we want to make every attempt to be as gender neutral and inclusive as possible, the pronouns that we use are largely based on prevalence. So when we talk about he referring to perpetrators and she when we're referring to survivors, that's because those are overwhelmingly the genders that are associated with this. We recognize that all people may be targeted and may also perpetrate, but we do want to use sort of and acknowledge that prevalence. The other big thing is that this is not a fun topic for anyone. If you've experienced this, and particularly, it may bring back invasive memories when we talk about these things. And so we really, really encourage you to practice self-care. So let's talk about the nice guy. The term nice guy was actually taken from the mouths of survivors. When we would talk with them after this had happened, one of the most common things that would happen is that I thought he was a nice guy. And so this is something that we started to see more and more as a pattern. So who is he? Well, there's an upside. Okay, there's the outward-facing upside. Tends to be athletic, tends to be body conscious, tends to sort of keep fit. Very outwardly confident, tends to be attractive, and particularly tends to be popular within a peer group. So if the peer group happens to be sort of that athletic, sort of that upper sort of middle class social structure, that's what he tends to be attractive. If the peer group is sort of punks, sort of on the fringes, that tends to be who he looks attracted to. But in every case, he tends to have a good line of bull, tends to be a good talker, be able to talk people into things. Tends to be very well liked and trusted by women. And this is one of the things that tends to be a little bit confusing for people, because there are very often times where women will come to this person's defense saying, he never did this to me, he would never do this. Tends to be a leader of a group or a subgroup. So sometimes you see this, it could be the president of a fraternity, or the captain on an intramural team, or sometimes it's just a group of guys that sit in the back and make fun of people. But this person likes to be in charge and takes charge in those situations. Also has a very active social life. But there's a downside. There's the side that he tends to hide until oftentimes when he's around other men. This person is egocentric and self-serving. This person's socially immature, tends to have sort of that crude sense of humor. He does not feel guilt, at the very least, towards the sexual behavior. I'm not sure if he feels guilt about anything, but definitely about the sexual behavior, in large part because he sees women as objects. And how can you feel guilt about hurting an object? Tends to be very manipulative, and that's one of the things that's very, very common. He brags about scores with women or whomever his target is. I got this person, I got that person. And he does not handle rejection or criticism well at all. Now we're going to get into the behavior, and really going to go through a 7-step process. Now, some of this might look very familiar to some of you. And again, I want to encourage you to practice self-care. Some of you might say this is similar to some of the things I've seen, but not exactly. One of the things that we talk about with profiles, and one of the challenges is that sometimes it's a little bit subtly different, but oftentimes, in my experience, these are present. So let's talk about step 1, and that's target selection. So the first thing that happens is this person targets a number of different people. This is very much premeditated. While this person doesn't think about what he does as sexual assault, he's going out for a score, he's going out for a conquest, he's going to get some, whatever that is in their terminology. This person has targeted people for that act. Generally, it's a social setting. The other thing that's unique is that this is not often just one target in one night. Sometimes they'll bring 2 or 3. And so they're not sure exactly which one of those 2 or 3 they're going to get with, but it's going to be one of them. The target has a profile. This person is looking for someone who's younger than them. Okay, if this person is a college senior, they're typically going after college sophomores or freshmen. If this person is a college freshman, they're typically going after high school seniors and juniors. Okay, and vice versa. If it's in the professional world, this person might be a 4 or 5 year old teacher, and they're looking at the person who's in their first year as a teacher. Someone who's younger and who's just gotten to the situation. They have a just world attitude. What that means is that this person believes that in a just world, bad things don't happen to good people. So we can sometimes call that naive, or sometimes say that this person just, won't necessarily take the same actions that someone who's a little bit more jaded might do. But they're looking for someone who's flattered by their attention. Okay, so sometimes we hear from people that this person is so attractive, that led to their targeting. Well, maybe, but more often they're looking for someone who's going to be flattered by that attention. And so if it's someone who doesn't typically get asked to the party, that's someone that often might be targeted for that. There's often an incidental contact. So this person might have bumped into him, they might have invited to the party, they might have sat next to each other in class, but they kind of know each other, right? So when we talk about people who target people they know, it's not always the case where this person has known this person for years and years. It might be, but more often it's that incidental contact. The target has questionable support. So this person might be alone at a party. This person might have friends who are getting drunk and not able to intervene. This person might have friends who are really the nice guy's friends, who are kind of setting that person up. But that questionable support is something that I look for. And of course, alcohol is absolutely present. Not always absolutely, but in at least about 80% of the time, we find alcohol present. It kind of swims sort of in that environment. Step 2 is an approach evaluation. So this is when they get close. So this could be striking up a conversation, trying to finally sort of talk to the person. There's often a sense of desensitizing to intrusion. So this person might step into the person's personal space. Now any of us who've gone to college parties, there's often not a lot of space in those environments. So sometimes it's masked by that. But again, getting in close to see, will you push me away? There's a lot of flattery and sort of those things, but again, it tends to push back towards their sense, the concept of negging, if you will. There's often a push for alcohol, okay, whether or not they provide it or they have someone else to do it for them. There could be dosing with different drugs. There's a lot of drugs that are used for sexual assault. GHB is one of the ones that's most common of the illegal date rape drugs. Also Rohypnol or Roofies is another one. But the most common is alcohol. And so by dosing with alcohol, it might mean that you order a drink that's a vodka and orange juice. And the person brings back a vodka and orange juice, but that drink has 3 shots of vodka instead of 1. Okay? So that extra alcohol is designed to take you out of your sense of mind. Now this might lead to incapacitation, but it might just be so that this person ultimately sort of loses the ability to sort of protest. There's oftentimes also this subtle inappropriate behavior. Oftentimes in talking to survivors, there was a time when they recognized this made me feel uncomfortable. He made this awkward joke. His hand lingered somewhere it wasn't supposed to, but I ignored it. And so that subtle inappropriate behavior is very much a part of this approach and evaluation. Then there's going to be a separation. So there's often this separating statement. Hey, let me show you the rest of the house. Let's go somewhere where we can talk. Those statements are designed to try and get this person away from those people who might intervene. And for that end, we want to talk about the difference being isolated versus being alone. Because sometimes isolated is alone. Sometimes isolated might still be with a team of people who aren't going to intervene. But as long as that person has moved the target from anyone who will intervene, they've isolated and successfully separated that person. There's oftentimes this continuation of being the nice guy, of talking and the flattery and everything else. There can be patience. It might not be in this situation. It might be the next time. He might be setting something up for later in the weekend. But there will often be sort of that shift. An important note on this phase is that for bystanders, which is why we're here, we're talking about how to intervene to help this. This is the last chance to intervene. Because once this person is separated, we're not going to have the ability to make any impact. Step 4, the nice guy goes for a score, or tries to, have a one-night stand, or tries to have sex consensual. If the target does consent and has not had enough alcohol to incapacitate them, there will be an attempt at sort of mutual, pleasure, and then it'll end. Sometimes he'll say that he'll call, but usually they don't mean that. At this point, nothing illegal has happened. Okay, there's been no violation. It's been perhaps a not very satisfying, but a one-night stand. If the target does not consent, then there will be pressure. Okay, now we're allowed to try to talk people into some things, but pressure kind of borders on coercion. If there's threats, if there's sort of pressure, undue pressure on that. So yes, it would end. This may be still legal if the pressure doesn't get into coercion. It might not be. But if the answer is a no, then we move on to step 5. Step 5 is an intimidation phase. Okay, so sometimes I've heard that these nice guys will threaten. They'll say, if you don't do this, I'm going to tell everyone that you're a slut. If you don't do this, then I'm going to make it so much worse for you. If you don't do this, then there's going to be 6 of my guys that are going to run a train on you. Any of those threats, that's part of the intimidation. There's also this time that I've also heard just ignoring the target. This person saying no repeatedly, please don't do this, and they just ignore them and just continue to do whatever it is that they want to do. Now, there are some profiles that do sort of fantasize about violence, inflicting violence on a person. The nice guy is not one of them. Okay. However, if there is resistance, if the person scratches or kicks, this person might escalate and also, use violence. But physical violence is very rare. So if we're looking for bruises, if we're looking for scrapes on someone who's survived this, they typically won't be there. Step 6 is the sexual violation. The biggest thing about here is that there's no more attempt at being mutual. This is a take of what that person wants. And for that victim or for that survivor, this is an incredibly scary experience. Step 7 is termination. So termination has a twofold goal. So the first is that they don't want this person to talk to their friends. This person wants to continue, the nice guy continues to want to be able to work and to prey in that environment. And if this person tells all their friends, they're going to be less likely to do that. Also, this person, the nice guy doesn't want this person to tell the police, because again, that might impact them. So sometimes there's threats. If you tell anyone, I'll come back and I'll do this again. If you tell anyone, I'll tell everyone what a slut you were. Any of those other things. I have also seen that sometimes this person will jump right back into that nice guy persona. I had a really good time and I wish we could do it again soon. As creepy as that is. Some other characteristics. It is not uncommon that the survivor will return or see the nice guy. It's not even all that uncommon that the person might have contact or even have sex with the nice guy again. Sometimes we don't always define what our experiences are. And there's sometimes a sense of trying to figure out, I thought you were a nice guy. I want to see if you really are. What was going on with that? If accused, consent is the preferred defense. It's very rare that a nice guy will say that the sex didn't happen, but they will say that it was consensual. If there's talk, if the word spreads among their friends, very easily this person will try to discredit them. Look at who I am. I'm president of the fraternity. She's some freshman. Why would I even want to, do this to her if she didn't want to? Look, she's crazy. she's taking pills, she's on this, she's done this a number of different times. Okay? The only reason she's doing this is because I wouldn't go out with her. A lot of these attempts to discredit, again, it helps to keep his persona alive. And he has a strong ability to rationalize and deny. Again, we've already talked about this person has a good line of bull. This person is believable and manipulative. And this person also doesn't view what they did as rape. So that helps with that ability to rationalize. And unfortunately, it's very believable. Because as a society, we have not done a very good job of challenging some of the myths and challenging the fact that this happens far too often. So that is the nice guy.